I think combined, we have a chance to make a difference. And I think that how are we going to move forward? And I think we have to find those commonalities and to press upon government that these are not numbers, these are human beings, and that you can't shove them under the rug. And we have to stand up, and we're going to have to do things like they did in the civil rights movement. It's the same thing. These are basic human rights that are not being addressed, and they have to be, and we will take it, you know. So, like I said, your message is getting out, and I think we got to, you know, to work with people who, like, I think Darrell Issa is a good guy. I do think he's a decent person. I do think he's under a lot of pressure. I think every congressman, every senator is under pressure constantly to get reelected and getting money. It's going to be really tough to compete. But when you see some obvious problems, I mean, I'll just go back historically, and then I'll let you guys, I don't know exactly to jump in here. But if you really want to go back and look at this historically, like I've been trying to do to kind of get a handle on it, children used to work in coal mines. And that used to be, that's what Karl Marx was writing about. He was writing about, you know, we shouldn't have to make children work on Sundays. They should at least get a day off. I mean, literally, this is what it was. So you have, and finally, people decided, that's why the Carnegie and these other rich people who owned coal mines and these workers were trying to make them work, and then they wanted basic human rights and basic living wages, or any kind of wage where they could survive, and they killed them, shot them, and finally the newspapers printed it, and that's why you have like Carnegie Institutes. They didn't do it to be, hey, let's do something with all this money in a positive way. They did it because those were the original publicists. They did it to say, well, we have to do something so they won't come after us and try to kill us, because people are very angry right now. And I know that there's an anger out there. I feel it. I do feel it. There's an anger. When someone has an injured child, and this could have been easily prevented, and that this is still continuing to go on, and government isn't doing anything to protect the most vulnerable members of a society. And that's really, really something, a basic human right that has to be protected. So, but I'm telling you that there is progress. It is getting better, and it's an honor to stand with you and to say that there's going to be progress, and we're going to have to get them. But I think the way to go is, like I said, we have to combine, we have to attack them, we have to focus on things like parental rights, and to make sure that these mandates, and talk about. And start figuring out how we can use the lack of real science against them. And that's a real problem. Anyway, so that's what I have to say about that. But anyway, there's a lot more we'll talk about, and I'll talk later. Anyway, so that's what I'm thinking. Thank you.
Rob, thank you very much. Wonderful. Before we wind up, it's been a wonderful panel. I would like the panelists, do you have any specific questions for Rob before we break? Does anyone have a question for Rob?
Where you been, man?
Oh, sorry, I was late. Merck just bought Jet Airlines, so that's why I was late, I guess. Sorry. I was asked by somebody why don't more celebrities stand up and speak out on this? Why is it just Jenny McCarthy and very few people? And to be honest, it's I've had a lot of bad reviews for different things I've done in my career, but I've never gotten more flack or more hate since I said I'll stand with people who, and I believe that this mother who told me that her child was fine until she got 11 different vaccines and 2 shots one day, and then that child was gone forever. And that really, really struck me. But there's a lot of fear out there, you know? I mean, you got Bill Gates on one side, and you got, you know, Jenny McCarthy and Rob Schneider on the other. It's tough.
You got Eden, you got it.
But I think, though, I think you got a lot of people. People come up to me secretly in Hollywood and they go, "What should I do? What do you know about this?" But they won't come out publicly about it.
Well, on behalf of my family and many, many others, thank you for doing so. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I think what we have to appreciate is we have to understand that the currency of the pharmaceutical industry is fear, and they are most generous with that currency. And once people realize that actually the power is with the people, when people stand together, when Hollywood stands together, when all those who know in Orange County private schools stand together and realize that the vitriolic attacks, the nastiness, the trolls, that is a measure of a system that has failed. When you have to enact mandates, when you have to force children to get vaccinated, that's not the measure of a successful public health program. That is a measure of its failure. Yeah. Why? Because this requires your confidence in the system, and that you are that close to winning. This is not a time for the autism community to fragment in any way, but as Rob says, to stand together. Rob.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if you think about what, you have to go and look at history. It's the only way to get a handle. I mean, it's really frustrating to sit with people and go, how come we can't explain this? How come I can just say, well, you know what? You think this amount of vaccines that no other society is getting doesn't have an effect. Well, let's say it could, but they won't even put it on the table. And then once you start to look under the veil just a little bit, you realize, well, vaccines have stopped all these deaths and the childhood. Well, you know what? They didn't really. If you take a look at let's look at the facts. Has all those, as soon as we got good sanitation, clean water, better nutrition, all of a sudden this was, but they fall on deaf ears for most people. But the people who are willing to listen, and that's who we need to get to. Because there's not going to get the people on the right. You're not going to get the people on the crazy who just believe everything the government says. And that's okay, but you can get the people on the fence. And you have to know, if you look at history, that we are winning. Because they can't do anything more than this. The only thing they could do is put you in jail, which they would like to do, actually. They would like to say, if you don't do this, they'd like to blame you if somebody gets measles in your neighborhood and dies. Well, let's find the person who wasn't vaccinated and let's blame them. They don't want to look at, and they will repeat lies over and over and over again. And newspapers and printed, I read them, several of them last night before I came here. And it's the same thing. It's well, they won't tell you. It's the unvaccinated ones, it's their fault. And they won't tell you that 70% of the whooping cough in the state of Washington was all by completely up-to-date vaccinated children. They won't tell you it doesn't work. They'll say, well, how come it doesn't work? Well, they just need more boosters. They won't tell you this is, at the farthest ends of scientific study, what they're realizing is that viruses teach something. They're not all the enemy. That there's information coming from this stuff. So unfortunately what we're doing is we're weakening an entire generations now of people's immune systems who now will not know how to deal with any form of virus and bacteria. And we have a weakened society. And that fits perfectly well with the pharmaceutical industry's needs and wants and profits. So, I'll just say this, as far as Gandhi said, first they laughed at me. First they ignored me. Then they laughed at me. Then they fought me. And I won. Well, they're fighting very hard right now. You got to know that. And I think what needs to happen is, I was in Cincinnati doing a show, and I do concerts and some other comedy clubs and things, and as well as television stuff. And 300 nurses were fired in Cincinnati. 300. Nobody showed up to protest this firing of people because they decided they didn't want flu shots because they know, probably more than anybody, that they don't work. And also that they make you sick. And that it's not only likely that You can get sick. You have a 56% chance of it working. Well, that's pretty sucky, isn't it? That means you have 50% working, not working, and then you can also give the flu to other people if you get this shot. And there were 300 fired, nobody showed up, nobody protested. That's got to stop. When people get fired for refusing to take shots, for refusing to take invasive medical procedures, people have to stand up in their neighborhoods and say, that's not okay, I'm not going to go to your hospital anymore. And then believe me, that'll have an impact.
We are ready to wind up. I'll leave you with one thought, and that is Joseph Stalin said that ideas are more dangerous than weapons. We do not allow our enemies weapons. Why would we allow them ideas? So go and have ideas, and then act on them. Thank you very much. What a wonderful day.